All right, things in both silos are heating up. Let's talk about Silo Season 2, Episode 8, The Book of Quinn. Hey everyone, it's David Stark from Watcher Pass, and I'm here to talk to you about Silo Season 2, Episode 8, The Book of Quinn, which is coming to Apple TV Plus on January 3rd, 2025, our first Silo episode of the new year. Let's hope that life doesn't imitate art, but I guess we'll find out on both accounts. So this is the 8th episode of a 10-episode season. There's 2 more left. This is setting up some very big events that I assume will conclude this season of Silo. Now, is this episode worth your time? Is this worth watching? My hot take is I do think you should watch it. I thought it was kind of a weaker episode than some of the previous ones. I really loved the last episode. I really love this season, so I still liked this episode. I just don't think it was as good as some of the previous ones. But I do still think it sets up some interesting future plot lines, ones that I hope we will see to fruition this season. I'm worried that maybe this is setting up some big events that will then spill over into an eventual season 3 of Silo. I don't know if there will be a season 3, but I kind of guess there will be. So all that being said, I do think you should watch it. I think you should watch this season. This is a fantastic series. I love Silo. I've loved season 2. This episode just kind of like was a little down for me. But overall, I'm going to tell you a lot about the episode, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and then really quickly go into a recap. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the recap section. If you don't know what happens in this episode, I would turn off when I get to the recap. Before that, though, I'll keep it vague. I'll keep it spoiler-free. I'll let you know when I get to those spoilers. So in Silo Season 2, Episode 8, it continues the storyline of what happens in the last episode, namely in the original Silo. Walker is very concerned about McLean and maybe is willing to do some things that she probably shouldn't. And Mr. Kyle is exploring this coded message that they found on a hard drive that Juliette had and trying to see what interesting information from the past they might need in Silo's present. Now, over in Silo 17, Jules went and restarted this pump, so Silo 17 is no longer filling with water, but when she surfaced, Solo wasn't there, and there was just a trail of blood. So episode 8 continues both of those storylines, adds a little bit more intrigue, and some very big surprises over in Silo 17. So, things I liked about this episode. The first, I still love the world. I love this world. I mean, let's give you my first and everyone. I love Silo. I think it's fantastic. I love that it is like so dark, so post-apocalyptic. The 2 silos I think are really fun, especially now that we're getting some time in Silo 17. You get to see the big contrast between like now Jules all alone trying to figure out what to do, and then the kind of silo that she left kind of tearing itself apart, trying to make the best of it. I really like both of these worlds, and I like how we get to see both of them throughout this episode. And I do also like the glimpses of the outside world we get. Very occasionally, we get glimpses of the outside world, and it's really interesting to see the reactions to people of what we would think would be like mundane pictures. So, second thing I love. I like the intrigue and the shifting power. I've liked the intrigue so far. This is mostly in the Silo original world where you've got mechanical kind of at war with the upper levels and some of the pieces that are falling into place, some of the alliances that are forming to try to push that one way or the other. And the last thing I really loved, I like Mr. Kyle. I like Mr. Kyle's emergence. He was kind of an interesting character. He had a very bad fate at the start. Now he is kind of becoming more and more interesting, more and more influential. And I like to see his growth. His growth has been fun to see, especially in this episode. So all that being said, things I didn't love as much. The first, it's a little bit scattered in the original style. Now look, I am kind of a hypocrite here because I said, look, I love all these new storylines and how it keeps it fun and interesting. This one felt a little bit too much. It felt like we were jumping between scenes very quickly. You get like a snippet, almost like it wouldn't even matter. Like there was a scene where Bernard like walked through a door, and I'm like, okay, like yeah, great, important, but do we need to see that? There's a lot of jumping between the various storylines in the original Silo, and it felt a little bit too scattered. I assume that will clean up as we lean more into the finale, but this one felt a little bit much. And the last thing I didn't love as much, I'll call it just a strange recovery. One of the characters has to do some things to recover. It felt a little bit off. It felt like, I don't know, a little too delayed, a little bit too convenient, but I'll go into that in the recap. So, all that being said, Silo Season 2, Episode 8 comes to Apple TV Plus on January 3rd, 2025. Definitely think you should check it out. It is a weaker episode, but still, I love this series. I love this season, and I really can't wait to see where it's going to go in the last 2 episodes. So, if you do watch it, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I'd love to hear it. And I'm going to really quickly go into a recap right now. So if you don't know what happens in this episode, I would turn it off now because there will be spoilers. So this season has jumped between the original Silo and Silo 17. I will end on Silo 17. It's a little bit more compact of a story, and that's also where the episode ends on. So I'll end there. Let's go into the original Silo, where there was a lot more going on. Like I said, it jumps around a lot. I've tried to consolidate the stories into digestible pieces. We will see what happens. So this episode seems to try to breed a little bit of discontent with what the founders were doing, just with some one-off lines and then a main thread involving Mr. Kyle. So at the very start, Shirley and Billings are talking, and she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing down here?" And he's like, basically, he's doing an investigation, trying to do what he can as a sheriff, until they tell him not to. And Shirley gets mad at him because he is like so following protocol. Billings is all about the pact, Mr. Pact, and at this point, Shirley like says, don't you think maybe like, what if the founders lied? Like, what if it's all BS? Basically, she says that Billings can't handle that. Billings is all about the pact and protocol. But remember, he also maybe has a little tiny sliver of rebellion because he has that contraband picture from the before times that he took from Juliette that he showed to Patrick Kennedy. So Billings has a slight rebellious nature, and maybe this is seeding some doubt for him in the future. Now, the main thread, the main storyline here is Mr. Kyle trying to decode this encoded letter from Salvador Quinn. And so he is trying to find more and more about Salvador Quinn, and he tries to start flexing his weight. He goes to, I think, Judge Meadows' house, and when he gets there, there's some IT folks there who are like cleaning it up, cleaning it. And Mr. Kyle basically flexes his badge. He's like, I'm the shadow to Bernard. Like, look, my badge is blue. You have to do what I said. And they leave. This is going to anger Sims, but it also shows that Mr. Kyle is starting to kind of realize the importance that he has. Now he is looking, and eventually he finds Salvador Quinn's ancestors and goes down there to try to like get some information about Salvador Quinn to help him decode this letter. And we find out the ancestors kind of hate Salvador Quinn. Salvador Quinn is seen as like a villain in the silo. He destroyed the silo's history. He severed the ties to like the old world and whatnot. And so people in the silo despise him, and his ancestors do as well. They say like, we've had to live with his legacy, ever since it happened. I think it's been 140 years, and they're trying to forget it. They don't even use Salvador Quinn's name. They don't even use, I guess, the Quinn last name anymore. So Mr. Kyle, now feeling cocky because he's flexed his badge, goes and is like, well, I bet you have some more information, so I don't really want to have a judicial cleaning come down here and find it, and basically threatens them that he's going to like disrupt their lives if they don't give him information about Salvador Quinn. The dad sees right through it. Mr. Kyle is not inherently a mean person, and so he confronts Mr. Kyle later and basically is like, look, we hate Salvador Quinn. We don't know anything about it, but you are not a mean person. It doesn't fit you. You shouldn't pretend to be one because we can see right through it. And this was, I think, an interesting moment for Mr. Kyle because he was starting to get a little cocky, and now he's kind of like put down to earth. Now later, Bernard tells him the real story of Salvador Quinn. Quinn was actually a hero in the eyes of the kind of like government of the silo, because before Quinn, there would be rebellions in the silo every 20 years. Every 20 years, Mechanical would rise up, try to take down the leadership, and every time that happened, it risked opening the airlock and exposing this entire silo, poisoning the entire silo. And so Salvador Quinn figured out that this is happening because people knew the history. They knew that there were rebellions, and so because of that, they would emulate it. So Salvador Quinn's idea was to sever that tie, destroy all the past knowledge, destroy access to that information, and also use a drug to kind of erase people's memories so they didn't know about these rebellions. And so people would kind of live in bliss. And because of that, there were 140 years of peace. After Mr. Kyle learns this, he goes back to the family, apologizes, essentially says like, I can't tell you how I know this, but Mr. Quinn is actually a hero. He saved the silo. It gives him a little bit of information, but also says, look, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have threatened you. This causes the family to kind of trust him, and they tell him about Judge Meadows coming to their house years ago and looking for something from Salvador Quinn. And they tell him that she took Salvador Quinn's copy of the pact. Later, Mr. Kyle finds that copy of the pact and starts to decode a secret message that was left by Quinn in the pact, and then in that letter as well. And what Mr. Kyle decodes, the first little bit of decoded information is, if you've gotten this far, you already know the game is rigged. So it seems like maybe Salvador Quinn is trying to leave a message. Maybe after he did this radical thing to the silo, maybe he regretted it. Maybe he's trying to leave some other information. We don't know. That's the only thing we get, but seems like maybe there's more to the story than we thought. Meanwhile, Mechanical is running out of supplies, and so they come up with this crazy idea to go up into a supply area to kind of drill up in there like they've done through another a couple other levels of the silo and try to get some supplies. Now, meanwhile, Sims is trying to figure out what Mr. Kyle is doing, and he tries to confront the new head of IT. The head of IT says, like, no, I can't tell you. Like, I report to Bernard, go away. Miss Sim's wife eventually goes to the head of IT and tells and convinces him to give some info, basically saying like the good of the silo needs this. Sims has the silo's best interest at heart, so you need to help him. So later, the head of IT gives Sims a little tidbit of information that Mr. Kyle is looking for info about Salvador Quinn. And then Sims is like, okay, good, keep me updated on his movements. And the head of IT is like, no, this was a one-off because I respect you, because I owe you for this. After this, we're done. So at least Sims now knows about Mr. Kyle and what Mr. Kyle is doing. Now, Sims later confronts Mr. Kyle and threatens him, basically, trying to get information from Mr. Kyle about what he's working on. He's like, I can't tell you anything. And then Sims threatens him, basically saying, like, it's a shame if your mother, who works in, I think, essentially the hospital, I think the trauma ward or something like that, would ever have you as a patient. So Mr. Kyle, I think, kind of just brushes this off, but we see that Sims is trying to kind of like get some allies. He's trying to get Mr. Kyle on board. He's trying to get the head of IT to give him information. He is trying to, I think both save the silo and also undermine Bernard, trying to figure out what Bernard is doing and trying to kind of rally his own troops to try to counteract whatever it is Bernard's doing. Now, Bernard is doing some stuff, and we find out that one of the things he's doing is turning Walker into a narc. She gets called by Bernard to come up and fix something. When she gets there, we find out that Bernard, it was only a cover. She had to like repair this pump or something. And when she gets there, Bernard seems to want to know information. I don't think she actually, we don't see her telling him, but it seems like she does snitch on the mechanical folks in order to help McLean. Bernard basically wants her to report on things, be his eyes down in mechanical. And if she does this, then he will like essentially look after McLean. She does all this just to see McLean, and she eventually sees her locked up in solitary. But I think the implication is if you don't help me, McLean is going to go downhill very quickly. So now Walker is Bernard's puppet. The mechanical raid, as you can imagine, if you have a narc, a snitch in there, goes poorly. It's unsuccessful. IT is waiting for them in the medical supply area when they get there. And after this raid, Shirley goes to see Walker and tells her it was unsuccessful. And Shirley mentions she thinks there's a snitch, and Walker's like, oh, wow, that's crazy. How would that happen? Walker is acting a little bit weird, and I think Shirley starts to suspect it. So that's everything that happens in the original silo. Over in Silo 17, a little bit more compact, but still, we get some Silo 17 scenes, which makes me happy. Juliette is starting to walk around the silo after she emerged from the water too quickly. She didn't have time to depressurize, and so, or to, I guess, to regulate her pressure. And so now she's walking around and starts to feel sick. I was kind of surprised she didn't feel this when she just got out. Like when she got out, she was walking around like normal. But eventually she starts to feel sick, starts having trouble moving. So she goes and grabs a hose and goes under the water to try to like equalize her pressure. But weirdly, she just grabs a regular hose and doesn't cover the end when she jumps in the water. So it's just going to fill with water. Like, I think her idea is I'll breathe through this, but she needs to cover that end or else it's just going to fill with gross water that she's either going to have to drink to get some air or like blow out through however many feet of tubing there is. It's not going to work out well for her. Now, later, while she's underwater trying to equalize her pressure, the hose magically has a spigot at the end, which seems to regulate the breath. So that's how they explain it, I guess. When she grabbed it, it was a plain hose, a plain cut hose, but now it has a spigot so she can get some air, regulate her breathing. But eventually, I guess it runs out of air, and so she surfaces. Now she sees she's walking around the silo. Eventually, she sees someone who like puts a spotlight on her and tells her to eventually stop. And Juliet's like, "Well, what are you doing? Like, whatever. I need to find that person that you took." And then this mysterious character who told her to stop shoots her in the shoulder with an arrow. And so I guess in like bad game memes, Juliet can now say like, I used to be mechanical until I took an arrow to the shoulder. There we go. Eventually Juliet goes, pulls out the arrow, cleans the wound. Luckily, she has all of Solo's medical supplies. I hope she has some antibiotics saved because Solo makes those. Solo's missing. We'll see what happens if this wound gets infected, but she cleans it, she covers it up. And later, she makes a makeshift shield and baton. And Julia is really tough because she got shot in the shoulder. She is now holding a shield with that arm that got shot in the shoulder. Good for her. She goes to explore and she finds a body. She approaches the body, and the body then jumps up and attacks her. She fights with it a little bit, eventually, knocks the body down, or this person down, unmasks it, and it's just a kid. It's some kid. And then we look up and someone tells her to stop. We look up and we see two other kids, older kids, but two other kids. One of them looks a lot like Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. She has red hair, she has a bow, it's aimed at Juliette. And she says, I already put an arrow through your shoulder, one more move, and this goes into your heart. So, Juliette seems to be trapped. Who are these three random people? Oh, we don't know. I guess, we don't know. What are they going to do? Well, we don't know. So let's go into some speculation. I don't know who these random people are. We've never seen them before. I mean, there's been hints that maybe there's other people in Silo 17, but who they are is anyone's guess. They don't seem to be killers, though. They were attacking Juliette, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like they didn't like kill her instantly. They shot her in the shoulder. This time they don't kill her when she's fighting the kid. They have it trained on her. Maybe they think she's useful and they want to use her. I don't know. But who are these kids? How are they in the silo? How are they surviving while Solo is also in here and like Solo didn't know about them? I'm not sure. It's a weird situation. Did they kill Solo? We haven't seen anything about Solo. I don't think Solo's dead. I'm not sure if he is, but I don't think he's dead. I feel like we would have heard something about it. So I think maybe they have captured Solo and now we're trying to capture Juliette. Maybe they're just trying to take over this silo. Maybe they're trying to get information from Solo about how to get behind the vault. Remember, Solo never left the vault. Maybe they've been waiting for this opportunity and now they're trying to like torture Solo to get information. I don't know, but Silo 17 is going to get pretty interesting. Now, over in the original Silo, I think we're setting up for a Bernard Sims kind of clash. And that's what it seems like. Sims is kind of consolidating power, trying to figure out what Bernard is doing. Bernard seems to be holding on by a thread, but now he has a little inside piece in Walker. And it seems like Mechanical might be running out of ideas. They had some good victories, but they're running low on supplies. They are kind of running out of options. So I think this is lead up to a maybe Mechanical upper levels attack that may end in Sims taking out Bernard and maybe taking over. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. But that is Silo Season 2, Episode 8. Like I said, definitely check it out. It is not as good as the other episodes, but I did like it. So if you do watch it, let me know what you think. Let me know what you liked and didn't like. I'd love to hear it. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you. So in Silo season 2, so in the Silo episode, yeah.